So I was talking to a viewer of these videos the other night about who do we listen to? Who do we give credibility to? Who do we look to for wisdom and guidance? And that is a good topic to discuss. So I guess I'll just talk about who do I listen to. So this is where men and women often come a cropper, because women often ask their man for an opinion, but then they treat it like it's worth nothing. So when you ask a man for his opinion, you're really asking him to give you the best of himself, meaning the best of his judgment, and he's going to reveal to you the best of the sources of information, and then his judgment. So when you ask a man for his opinion, it's a really big deal. And if you then cavalierly dismiss it, as many women do, then it's very wounding. And it's not nearly so serious a thing when you ask a woman for her opinion. They don't take it so seriously. So, but for a man, you ask me my opinion on Iran, and I don't know, I guess I'd think about it and say, okay, this is someone I trust, and that's someone I trust, and it's something that usually a responsible man thinks about. So I made a mistake here. I am stuck. So I guess I look for people who have an accurate sense of themselves and of reality. So if I catch someone like inflating their own importance, inflating their own expertise, then I just naturally just tend to disregard what they have to say. So let me give more examples. So I grew up a Christian, Seventh-day Adventist Christian, and all the time I would listen to Seventh-day Adventist preachers pontificate on the meaning of various Bible verses. And when you're a Protestant, okay, there's the idea that every person can just dip into the Bible and God will speak to them, because the Bible is God's word. And so every individual can just dip into God's word and it will speak to them. So, okay, that is the approach of Protestantism. But if you're going to be a clergy and then pronounce on the meaning of text, I feel like there should be a higher standard than God told you what this text meant. So I just constantly remember Christian clergy stating definitively, well, the Greek word really means this, and the Hebrew phrase really means that. And 99% of the time, these Christian clergy were not literate in the languages that they were pronouncing on. Okay, they were saying the Hebrew means this and the Greek means this, but they weren't literate in Greek or Hebrew. Yeah, they'd taken the required 2-3 years of Greek and Hebrew at seminary, but anyone who's taken 2 years of Spanish in school realizes that unless you follow that up, that's not really literate in a foreign language just because you've taken 2 years of classwork. So I fairly quickly got a sense that a lot of people were preaching on things that they didn't really know much about. And so those are not people I take seriously. Now, there are Seventh-day Adventist scholars of Hebrew and Greek, and they are fewer than 1% of the clergy who are opining on what the Bible means. So there's Roy Gain. He is a true scholar of Hebrew and of biblical Hebrew. But for all the other people who are opining on the biblical text and preaching this is a matter of life and death, this Bible verse really means this, and they weren't even literate in Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, okay, that's not someone I can take seriously. So people who try to pretend a much greater level of expertise than they have, people who pontificate on things where they simply don't have the learning, those are people I just instinctively reject and ignore. And there are a lot of cons run in religion, as in other parts of life. So people in religion may be a con for money, may be a con for attention, it may be a con that they're running for power, for prestige, for influence, for adoration. There are all sorts of cons that religious leaders run. And this isn't just exclusive to Christianity. I noticed that the most charismatic rabbis that I've known, who I most wanted to follow and attach myself to and devote myself to, I noticed all of them were pretty much running some kind of con. That they were deliberately trafficking in things that they knew were not true, because that was the path to prestige, to adoration, to money, to influence, to power. So, for example, if you want to become a Jewish influencer or a Jewish leader, there are tremendous incentives to blame Jewish problems on non-Jews. If you want to be a black leader, there are a lot of incentives to blame black problems on non-blacks. So if you want to be a leader of an ethnic group, if you can keep making the case how your group's problems are primarily the result of out-groups, then you're very likely to get power and influence and adoration and affection, because it's just a human tendency to want to blame your own group's problems on the behavior of out-groups. Other thing I noticed is, particularly among rabbis, how they would be willing to lie and distort what the Gedolim has said, the great rabbis of the past, great texts of the Jewish tradition. They'll stand up publicly and distort or lie about what the text actually says, and they feel justified in doing so because they believe they're doing it for a Torah cause. So you'll find rabbis who say, yeah, it's okay to misrepresent the truth if you're doing it for a Torah cause, if you're doing it for a good cause. And so I remember I'd ask hard questions of some rabbis publicly. I'd challenge them. And then the ones who I realized lacked good character were those who would lie and distort and manipulate the facts to give a crowd-pleasing reaction, to put me in my place, to slam me down, to look good, to make Torah look good, or to make Orthodox Judaism look good. They would be willing to lie and distort to give a crowd-pleasing reaction. So obviously those are not people that I take seriously, that I accord respect. So generally speaking, I found that the slicker the speaker, the more they have this narcotic effect, this hypnotic effect. They intoxicate people with their words. People like Barack Obama kind of puts you in a hypnotic state when you listen to him. You just kind of feel good and kind of tune out of reality. Those are not the type of people that I trust. Reality and truth is usually difficult, hard, demanding, frequently uncomfortable, and there's usually a price for telling it. Okay, every society has its noble lies that the ruling elite try to promote to keep up their status of being part of the elite, and so if you go up against those lies, then there's going to be a big price to pay. Not sure why I'm not able to read the chat today, but just keep doing the best I can here. So the truth usually isn't slick. Truth usually doesn't intoxicate you. Truth doesn't usually have a narcotic effect on you. The truth usually doesn't hypnotize you. The truth doesn't usually get you to kind of tune out of reality. So, for example, if you're a Christian clergy, if you want to preach about the afterlife, that will have a hypnotic, narcotic effect on the listener, because reality is hard. This world is hard. So you start talking about how wonderful things are going to be in the next world, then you'll get people to kind of tune out of their problems in this world and kind of go into this space that's beyond all empirical verification, and you can get a lot of love and a lot of adoration and a lot of followers by preaching this message that intoxicates people, that makes them drunk. But that's one thing I strongly respect about Judaism. So while Judaism's always affirmed a belief in the afterlife, to quote the Encyclopedia Judaica, it's rarely made that a central message. And in the way Judaism works, particularly even Orthodox Judaism, there's just not much talk about the afterlife, because there are a lot of things that may be true, but you don't, thinking about them doesn't have a good effect on you. So thinking about the afterlife causes you to pay less attention to this life, give less importance to this life. If you're a married man and your wife has had previous lovers, kind of dwelling on your wife's previous lovers, that's not gonna serve you well. That's not gonna make you feel good. So it's another example of things that probably best not thought about a lot. In Judaism, the study of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, is traditionally restricted to married men who have children over 40. Then you're allowed to study Jewish mysticism, because you have enough adult responsibilities going on that you're much less likely to be extreme and to check out of reality, because it's very possible to become so intoxicated with God that you just you don't really care about human suffering, because you're just one with the divine. You just lose your individuality in the divine. You just intoxicate yourself with God, and then you kind of check out of your daily responsibilities. They're just not so important, because you're so God intoxicated. So obvious, anyone who's peddling that kind of message, I'm highly suspicious of. And then I look for people who have a correct understanding of themselves and their abilities, their knowledge. Many people have this overinflated view of themselves. A significant number of people have a great underestimation of themselves, and neither group, by and large, do I look to for credibility and for truth and for guidance. So I'm just trying to think, who else do I listen to? So I prefer to listen to people with accomplishment rather than just hot air. And getting a PhD from a prestigious university is always a sign of accomplishment. They may be completely deluded, but it's a sign that they passed some tests. Publishing a book with a respected publisher, another good sign. If people deny that different peoples have different gifts, statistically verifiable, then I just can't take them seriously. So to me, race is the foundation for analyzing society, for understanding why different groups achieve different life results. There's an article in the Washington Post today about human capital, and it talks about certain nations develop their human capital better than other nations, and which nation was on top? I believe it was Singapore, and I think Hong Kong was up there, and Japan, and Northern European countries and Anglo countries were right at the top. And it was basically a chart of HBD, human biodiversity, but just using different language. But it was fascinating how countries' human capital just essentially correlated with average IQ. So I think Hong Kong has the highest average IQ of any country, around 108. Then Japan, China, and South Korea around 105. Italy and Germany around 102. United States is about 97 and steadily dropping. So we get an influx of low IQ immigrants, and also low IQ people tend to reproduce more rapidly than higher IQ people. So higher IQ people use protection when they have sex, and therefore they have fewer kids. Lower IQ people much less likely to use protection, therefore they reproduce a lot more frequently. This creates a dysgenic effect, so that each generation seems to be stupider on average than the previous one. So these are the basic facts of reality that, unless someone acknowledges these basic truths, I just don't find that I can take them seriously. So who do I respect? People like Steve Sailer, my co-host Kevin Michael Grace, a lot of the people that Steve Sailer quotes approvingly, people who do hard statistical work and therefore base their analyses on human biodiversity and statistics and just noticing reality. Someone who'll get up and tell an audience what the audience wants to hear, that's not someone that I'm going to respect and look to for truth. Someone who gets up there, tells an audience things it doesn't want to hear, that what he wants them to hear, who's willing to sacrifice his popularity and his following to stand up and say the truth. Someone like Charles Murray, okay, that's someone that I can respect. And so Trump gained my respect very quickly in 2015 when he didn't back down after he received this wave of boycotts after his initial remarks. So I think Univision and Sears and all these different boycotts were aimed at Trump after he announced his candidacy with that controversial speech noticing all the problems that illegal immigrants from Mexico were causing for the United States. He stood up to those wave of boycotts. He was willing to suffer millions and millions of dollars in losses to stand up and say what he believes, and he didn't back down when he denied that John McCain was a war hero. And the way this guy has refused to back down is something that I found admirable. He's willing to say a lot of hard truths at a cost. Someone's willing to stand up and say hard truths at personal cost, particularly at great personal cost. That's someone that I can look to. So when you have the yammering mob, like screaming for someone's scalp because they said inconvenient truths, okay, I'll look to those heretics. I distrust the mob, the outraged mob, the people who just point and sputter and yell slurs like racism and bigotry and xenophobia and sexism and racism and all that nonsense. I also find it tremendously impressive when someone's a good listener, when someone's like willing to take in what other people say and then respond to that, rather than to a caricature, rather than to a straw man of what other people say. That's someone who gains a lot of credibility with me. I remember I was listening to this talk by a Reform rabbi who also had a PhD in Talmud, and I thought of some challenges, and I came up to him afterward and said, "What about XYZ?" And he said, "Yeah, you're right." And that he was willing to acknowledge counterpoints to what he'd been talking about. That's someone who gains credibility with me. Okay, bye.